a welcome. Oh, thank you, Bear. We have Jocelyn, James, and Bear, all four of whom are Pinecone people. So they'll be monitoring the chat for any questions you have during the webinar. But we're also going to have a live Q&A after the webinar where I'll be answering questions. So if you want to ask me specifically a question, save it to the end. Otherwise, James, Bear, and Jocelyn know a crap ton about all the things, so they can answer you if you have any live questions during the presentation. So Jocelyn, do you want to say anything else, or is that we're just going to get started?
Hey everyone, I'm the community manager at Pinecone. I just started here recently, and I think we should just get rolling. So Audrey, take it away.
All right, cool. So this is Streamlining RAG Applications with Canopy. My name is Audrey. I'm a senior developer advocate at Pinecone. And let's just get right into it. Oh wait, hold on, gotta do one thing. Move all of my Zoom things over here. Okay. Now, all right, so Canopy is an open source RAG framework from Pinecone. It abstracts away the non-trivial tasks involved in creating RAG-based applications. And if anybody here is not familiar with RAG, it's retrieval augmented generation. And we'll go more into that and the processes involved with it a bit later. So some of the tasks that Pinecone does for you, so you can concentrate on the important thing, which is making your end product, is the data chunking. The vector/embedding generation. We're going to be using vectors and embeddings, those two words interchangeably here, so just so you don't get confused. The vector database setup, the query optimization, the context generation, and the LLM orchestration and management. And LLM, as I'm sure you guys know, is a large language model, just FYI. All right. So from you, all you need to provide Canopy is a Pinecone API key and a Pinecone environment. Both of those can be accessed on app.pinecone.io after you sign up for an account. We also, under the hood, Canopy uses OpenAI as its LLM of choice. So you'll have to sign up for an OpenAI API key on openai.com. .ai. I'm not sure what the actual address is. And then right now, Canopy only works with text data. So you can have text data in pretty much any format. The most common ones are Parquet, JSON-L, text, or CSV. And then because Canopy under the hood is powered by Pinecone, you get free storage and compute up to 100,000 vectors. That's about 15 million words or 30,000 pages of text. You get your Pinecone dashboard. So if anybody's used Pinecone before, you know we have a streamlined dashboard. And so all the Canopy created indexes will be on the same Pinecone dashboard where all of your other non-Canopy indexes live. We just got our HIPAA compliance. So if you're working with medical or personal medical data, that is very exciting. So we're HIPAA compliant, GDPR compliant, SOC 2 Type 2 certified, and everything about Pinecone is purpose-built for vector computation. So let's continue. So this is the typical Gen AI or generative AI workflow. On the left-hand side, you have a user. They will ask an LLM a question, and the LLM or large language model will answer the user. If we go to a more concrete example, the user could ask, what is the most colorful bird in the world? The LLM would likely be a model that was created by OpenAI or hosted on Hugging Face, etc. And the LLM would answer, the most colorful bird in the world is a parrot. But when we get into RAG, so retrieval augmented generation, the retrieval augmentation part is what you see on the bottom. And that's where instead of sending the user query directly to the LLM, we augment the user query with context or search results retrieved from a vector database. So if we build this up to our concrete example, so we again ask what is the most colorful bird in the world, and let's pretend in our fake universe that we have some proprietary bird documents in our vector database. So we would send that user query to the vector database, get the vector answers, And that's what we call context. And then we would pair that context with the original user query and send that double pair to the large language model in order to give the large language model access to information it otherwise would never have known about. And often we see that this reduces hallucinations. You get much more detail in the answer. So in this example, the LLM, instead of just saying, oh, it's a parrot, it would say it's a Wilson's bird of paradise, its prominent colors, etc. And then it'll also usually provide you a link for the citation, the information that it got it from. And that augmentation of the retrieved vector search results is what is non-trivial, and it requires some information retrieval knowledge and developer expertise to do correctly. And this is what Canopy abstracts away for you. Oops, there we go. So the non-trivial steps, again, chunking, choosing the model. Once you choose the model, how do you actually use the model? So generating those embeddings, setting up the vector database, generating the context from those vector database search results, choosing your large language model that you want to actually interface with, and then engineering those prompts. And by engineering, we mean the discipline called prompt engineering. So it's basically just writing in natural language prompts to the large language model. And these require a bit of research just to know how to actually get the large language model to act the way you want them to act. So Canopy, this is my Canopy little avatar. She is to the rescue, and she is going to do all of this stuff for us so we can concentrate on more important things. So this is so there are two ways to deploy Canopy. One is as a service. So Canopy comes with its own server. Everything is wrapped in fast API decorators. It's written in Python, if I didn't mention that before. And basically within the Canopy server, you have the chat engine, the context engine, and the knowledge base. And then these modular parts can also be deployed as libraries. So you can use any of these items. My dog is jumping behind me. You could use any of these items individually within your existing tech stack, or you can use it as a self-contained service like I showed before. So this is my favorite part of Canopy. This is essentially a developer tool. It's a CLI that Canopy ships with. And once you have your documents in your Canopy index, you can issue the command Canopy chat. And this is where you can tell the difference between when you don't, when you chat with your LLM with the context you gathered from the vector database and without. So you can really see the difference that your vector search results are making in your RAG application. And let's say you're already on board with RAG, you want to do RAG. You can also use the Canopy chat to figure out which configuration of your RAG app you want. So if you have like different chunk sizes or different token overlaps or something, you can chat with the different configurations and figure out which one gives you, the business person, the search results that you think your user would find most relevant. And we'll have a live demo of this function a bit later. So we're going to dive below the surface into those three modular components I spoke about before. So the chat engine is the first wrapper. The chat engine handles your prompts and saves your chat history. And it can save state, and so you can talk to it using multiple turns, multiple states. The context engine builds and manages your context. The context, again, are the search results from your vector database, and the knowledge base orchestrates all of the vector stuff for you. So the chunking, the actual generation of the vectors, the index construction of the Pinecone database, and then ultimately indexing objects into Pinecone. All right, so now we're going to go a bit into the technical details of before and after Canopy, so you can see exactly how it would change your current non-Canopy workflow. So without Canopy, as you guys probably know, the first step in building a RAG application is chunking. And this is when you chunk up your text data into chunks that are semantically relevant and understandable and coherent to the LLM, but small enough for the LLM to understand them and to not overflow your what's called a context window. So if you look on the right-hand side, there's a bunch of different heuristics you can use for chunking your text data. You could do it by paragraph. You can do it by some n number of tokens, or you can just do it by sentences, or however you want. There's a million different ways. But the point is that there are so many ways. It's really hard to know which way is the best, especially for specific use cases and business cases. And what was I saying? Oh, and the token overlap also, there's just a lot of different ways to do it. And you're never really, or I'm never really sure as a developer, which one is the best. And then there's other weird things that you have to deal with that are not super obvious. Like if you keep separators, so do you keep periods? Do you get rid of periods? Do you keep stop words? Do you contract possessives? Like there's all of these things that you're not really entirely sure what to do with that are from the natural language processing world. And with Canopy, all of this is done and abstracted away for you. We have a chunk size, or a maximum chunk size of 256. There's a Pinecone team dedicated solely to this product, and they're all information retrieval PhD holding experts, and they found that 256 is the chunk size that works best for most use cases. And if I didn't mention this before, because Canopy is completely open source, all of these, I guess I'll call them hyperparameters, are completely tunable for you. So in the live demo, I'll show you the configuration YAML, and you can either copy that YAML and change it as you want, or make changes directly into that YAML, reload Canopy, and you can have whatever chunk size you want, whatever token overlap you want, etc. We also, when we make the chunk sizes, we put the ID, the document ID, the text, the source, and whatever custom metadata fields we can infer from the text data that you upload into those chunks. And this is important because each chunk has to have a specific format in order to be indexed correctly into Pinecone. So we do that formatting for you. It defaults to a 0 overlap for the tokens. We do this really just to increase end user readability, because ultimately Canopy, a big part of it is as a developer tool. So you want to iterate really quickly and read the results, understand the results really intuitively. And we do by default keep what we call markdown separators. So if you think about a markdown text file, you have things like the 3 hashtags that are for, header 2 or whatever it is, and new lines and things like that. We keep those because we find that the LLM we use from OpenAI under the hood thinks that those are semantically relevant to understanding the intent of the text documents. So without Canopy, vectorization is another thing that is very confusing to me, and if it's confusing to me as like an expert in this field, it's probably confusing to everybody else. There's so many different embedding models, and it's really hard because each one is pre-trained on a specific use case or business domain, and it's hard to understand which one to pick. And then when you pick the model, it's hard to understand how to actually generate embeddings. Like if I have a text file and I have a model, okay, how do I make them talk to each other? I don't understand how to generate embeddings from my text file. With Canopy, this is all, again, done for you. So under the hood, we use Ada 2. This is a really popular general text embedding model from OpenAI. But we also support any other OpenAI embedding model, any Cohere model, and any scale hosted endpoint for their embedding models. And I personally am working with the team and another community member to integrate Azure OpenAI hosted models into Canopy. For the embeddings, they use the model automatically. They generate the embeddings for you. By they, I guess I mean Canopy, which I guess is an it. So it generates embeddings in batches of 400, and it uses all the Python syntax that maybe you do or do not know about, but for high scale things. So generator statements, generator functions. It keeps in mind timeouts from your API, stuff like that. So you don't have to worry about any of that. All right, so indexing. So Canopy, so as we all know, indexing documents into Pinecone is pretty trivial. It's pretty easy. But even though it's easy, it's just another step that I, as a developer, don't want to have to think about. So without Canopy, I would normally have to configure my Pinecone index. I would have to format my chunks into that format I talked about before with the ID and the source and the metadata. And then I would have to upsert my objects into Pinecone, which is upserting just means you're indexing and or updating objects. It's just a compound word of update and insert. And figuring out how to do upserting at scale is non-trivial. So even if you can do all these, excuse me, all these things easily, when you're dealing with 100 chunks, it's different when you're dealing with 100 million chunks. So with Canopy, we do this all for you. We set up the ideal Pinecone index we find helps most people get started that has a cosine similarity for its similarity metric. The other options, as usual, are dot product and Euclidean distance. It sets you up with a P1 pod type, which is our pod type that has the best balance between high throughput and cost. And then we automatically pull the index dimensionality from whatever embedding model you're using. So normally setting up a Pinecone index, you'd have to declare the dimensions that you want your Pinecone index to have. This is sometimes confusing because let's say you generated all your embeddings with some model, you forget what dimension those embeddings are, and then you create an index that has different dimensions. You can't actually index those vectors into that Pinecone index if it doesn't have the same dimensionality. So we just got rid of that hurdle for you, and we just automatically infer the dimensionality from the embedding model that we know you're using under the hood. And you automatically get one pod, which is one replica and one shard, and you can horizontally scale, vertically scale, just as you would normally in Pinecone if you need more scale than that. As I said before, we format all of those chunks into perfectly structured data objects for indexing. And we upsert your documents in batches of 200, also using that high throughput Python syntax I mentioned before with generator functions and things like that. All right, I think this is the last one. Without Canopy, there's also a lot of prompt engineering that goes into RAG applications. So one of the most confusing areas, I think, in my opinion, is the system prompt. So this is the prompt that you give the large language model that tells it how to act. So, and if you don't write these in like some weird format that takes, it's unintuitive and you have to do some research to understand really like what matters and what doesn't, you can definitely change the behavior of your LLM. And again, we do all of this for you. So I'll go into this configuration file in a minute in our live demo. But essentially, we have the system prompt here. It says, use the following pieces of context to answer the user question, blah, 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 blah. And then the second prompt you see here in the configuration file is unique to Canopy, and it's one of my favorite things. So if you have ever done any search engine work, which is my background, if I didn't mention that before, you'll know that sometimes user-written natural language queries are not optimal for sending to some database. So sometimes they're too long and too complex, especially, that sometimes it could confuse the database. So what happens under the hood with Pinecone is that a really long query that might talk about, I don't know, like might have like prepositions or entities that the database might not know about. Canopy under the hood will actually use ChatGPT 3.5 Turbo and break your user query down into subqueries and then send those subqueries in parallel to Pinecone and then sew up that context for you, the retrieved context for you, all without you knowing anything is happening in order to get you the most relevant search results. And we also do things like injecting line breaks in specific places into those prompts, which can actually change the behavior of the LLM, which is weird and you probably wouldn't know about unless you spent a lot of time on GenAI forums. All right, so now we're going to go into a live demo. Let me exit this. Let's see. How do I exit the actual? Whoop. Nope. All right, who knows how to get out of user view? Because I certainly do not. Nope. Oh, here we go. Sweet. Okay, so this is a, what do you call it, data set that James, who is here in this webinar, uploaded onto Hugging Face. We use this a lot internally at Pinecone. It's just a nice database to play with. And it's just a bunch of archive.org research papers. So it has the ID, the title of the research paper, the summary, the source, authors, etc. And I basically downloaded this into a JSON-L document. I think I put 10 of these documents into my Canopy index. And that is what we are going to play with. So let me put here. So I am in my fork of the Canopy repository locally right now. I'm in a poetry environment, which is what you would be in if you were doing development work. Otherwise, you can just pip install Canopy. And all you have to do to start up the server is Canopy start. And this will just spin up a, what is it, G unicorn server, G gunicorn. I don't actually know how to pronounce it. Cool. So now this server is running, blah, 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 on my local host 8000. So here, I just want to make sure my index name is still there. Cool. All right, so now I'm going to do that chat function that we saw before. So Canopy chat, and I'm going to put the no rag flag. This means that I want Canopy to show me answers both with rag, so with that retrieval, or with that context we retrieved from the vector database, and also without rag, so I can see like how impactful rag actually is in my use case. So, and again, this is just a development tool until you get your configuration down. And then what you would do is go into production, not through the CLI, but through the open source library. And the CLI is just kind of for local dev POC work. All right, so let's do like, hello, who are you? Just for fun, because this one's like a cute little prompt. Woohoo! I'm an AI language model. And, you know, not much difference between what OpenAI ChatGPT is giving us versus what it's giving us when it knows about the archive.org papers we have in our index. But I have some, let's go here. I have some questions I found were fun to look at. So let's go here. So this is a research paper. This is a research paper. One of that is in my index. It's about weight decay regularization. You know, it's very complicated. I don't feel like reading this whole thing. I just kind of want to know the highlights. And I saw that this guy's name, this Akeson guy, is all over this paper. And so I just want to know like who this guy is, why he matters, and what he said. So I am going, and I know this paper is in my index. So I'm going to ask Canopy, who is Akeson? Has he said anything about weight decay? And if so, what has he said? So this prompt, or not prompt, this user query is pretty complex, and it uses, you know, what are these called? Prepositions, something? Entities that are vague. So the LLM will have to understand that I'm talking about Akeson when I say he. And so let's see before and after RAG, how the different answers show up. Cool. So with RAG, we know that Akeson is the author of a theory related to weight decay, yada, yada, yada. And then it gives me the source. What is this? 1711. Cool. That's our source right here. That's awesome. That is the PDF we are reading right now. And then you can see without RAG, ChatGPT doesn't really know what this person is. It knows what weight decay is because that's, you know, a pretty publicly available concept to have been trained on, but it's not really helpful in like my business use case here. And let's see if I do a question that I guess needs the chat engine to understand previous questions. We can see that that works more. So I can say, please tell me more about his theoretical framework. You already told me some up here, but I want to know more about it. Let's see how this works. All right, cool. So Akeson's theoretical framework, as mentioned in the context. So that's pretty cool. So it like confirms that it's actually reading that context that I put in. So that's just a nice like debugging tool that it's actually doing what I want it to do. And it says a bunch about Akeson's concept, yada, yada, yada. Again, the source, cool, cool, cool. And ChatGPT, you know, is a little bit confused. He doesn't know who Akeson is, but it's like, give me more information to clarify your question. Like, I don't want to have to do that. I want it just to know about the things I'm asking it based on what is in its knowledge base. Cool. So I found another fun use case. that is about this archive.org paper, just from DeepMind. And here I wanted to know kind of like let's say that I'm a researcher, I have a paper, I want to know about the paper's authors or like kind of like metadata type information. So I have this question that I have copied and pasted. Let's clear this screen. So here I'm going to say, who wrote Selection Inference Exploiting Large Language Models for Interpretable Logical Reasoning? That's that paper here. And we know that it's this girl, Antonia Cresswell, Murray Shanahan, and Arena Higgins. And I also say, give me the citation for their paper, including links if possible. So let's see. Cool. So we have, so cool. It gives me the correct authors. This is also just a good gut test to see like if your LLM is actually correct. You could just, you give it answer, you give it questions you know the answer to make sure it's actually doing what you want it to do. It gives me the citation. So if I was writing a research paper, I could just copy paste this into my bibliography. Awesome. And it gives me the link here, archive.org. And we can see above that this is indeed the same archive.org link, which is great. Without context, it gives me incorrect information. So it copies the title, but ChatGPT does what's called a hallucination here. So it tells me that it was written by Akeson, who we talked about before, which is not true. Tom Brown and Jacob Forrester. This is not true. This is a total hallucination. And it says that it doesn't have direct access to the internet, blah, 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 blah. It tells me to go Google things on archive.org, which is where this paper is from, or Google Scholar. So not very helpful at all. And in fact, probably harmful because I just got incorrect information about the authors. And in this paper, there is something called an SI. I was just right before this live demo, I was just kind of browsing to see like what I might want to ask about this paper. There's this thing called an SI framework. And I, as a user, I don't want to read this whole paper. I just want to know what this SI framework is. And, you know, this paper is all about this framework. So let's ask it about this framework. So I said, who has an SI framework? Let's say, and tell me what it is. Cool. Let's see. Cool. So again, it says in the context. So the SI framework, as mentioned in the context, refers to Selection Inference Framework by Cresswell, Shanahan, and Higgins in their paper titled blah, blah, blah. That is 100% correct. And it also expands that acronym for me. So if I didn't know what SI stood for, now I know it's Selection Inference. That's very helpful. It tells me what this framework is. And that's awesome. It also gives me the source, the archive.org link again. Whereas in contrast, ChatGPT gives me the term SI framework is quite broad and may refer to various concepts, blah, 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 blah. Without further context, it's difficult to know. And this is the last example I'll show you, but it really shows the impact that RAG can have and how important it is to feed your LLM either proprietary information or publicly available information, like all of these archive.org web papers are totally publicly available. It's just that ChatGPT was not trained on them. Likely because when you go to archive.org, you have to click buttons and open up windows, and ChatGPT, the web crawler that trained it, I don't think was able to do that. So that is our live demo. Oh, and then I told you guys I would show you the config file. So this is the config file. It's just config.yaml. It is under config. There's one I'm playing with for any scale. And this is just the default one. So we have our system prompts here. We have a tokenizer. This is just for some natural language processing stuff. The chat engine, this is for if you know about RAG LLM stuff, this is for like the context window. We don't want to, we want to have a maximum number of tokens. We have a history pruner. So this is how you have like not multi-agent, I guess, but multi-turn conversations that remember the history that you have been talking about. We have ChatGPT. This is for that query kind of chunking where your query gets chunked into smaller queries, like I mentioned. Blah, blah, blah. And, you know, all of this is totally, totally changeable. So like I could be, Audrey is the coolest. And obviously that is an invalid input, but you can change this to whatever you want. So the nice thing about Canopy is that you can use it as an expert to do super complex things by modifying this configuration file, or you can use it as a total beginner, and just everything that could possibly be scary and confusing is abstracted away for you. And that is pretty much it. Let me go to our ending slide. Just a couple notes for the future of Canopy. The main things on the docket right now are just adding more model options. So something else we've been working hard on besides Azure, which I mentioned before, is the ability of Canopy to work with locally hosted models. So if you're a researcher, you have a bunch of GPUs, you have a billion parameter LLM on your local machine, eventually Canopy will be able to use that as the LLM it speaks to, and that would be really awesome. Direct file uploads is another thing we want to enable soon. So something like you can drag and drop PDFs, text files, audio files, all of that. Evaluation support, so something as a search engineer I'm really looking forward to is incorporating some evaluation components into the CLI so you could see how, okay, configuration 1 looks like this, configuration 2 looks like this, highlight the differences for me, show me exactly how they're different. That would be really helpful. More advanced retrieval features. Right now, it just gets you the most relevant vector search results based on your user query, but it would be nice if you had, a little toggle where you can toggle the diversity. So maybe you want not just the most relevant information, but maybe you want some randomness thrown in there just to get the LLM to sound a little bit more normal, or maybe to, I don't know, generate something unique. And we just launched the Anyscale endpoints, which I mentioned before. And that is it. We would love to hear from you. That's my email at Pinecone and my Twitter handle. And then our forum, which is where we have our staff support for the community members, is community.pinecone.io. We don't currently have a Slack channel, and our Discord channel is not monitored by staff. It's just community driven. So if you have a question you want to ask staff, I highly recommend posting it on the forum as the first place. And that is it. So now we have a long time, 30 minutes for live Q&A. So what can I answer for anybody? And I've not been keeping track of the chat, so.
There are lots of good questions in the chat. There are also a few that you can start with in the official Q&A box. Oh, sorry, didn't mean to interrupt, James.
Yeah.
People did use the Q&A box.
There
I was thinking people would not.
Yeah, you have many questions, Audrey. Do you want me to give you a few?
I have the Q&A box ones here, so I'll start with these. Okay, so Joseph asked, does it figure out the optimal chunking size? So right now, it doesn't do any type of like grid search based on any type of business heuristics you might feed it. So it automatically has a chunk size of 256, like I said before, but it wouldn't automatically, I guess, issue different chunk sizes and then like compare and contrast and find which one is best. That right now is up to the developer. Okay, Udo asked, when do you expect Canopy to become multimodal? Hopefully within the next like 6 to 9 months. It's really complex. I think the first piece of business is getting like the drag and drop thing for text documents, and then probably PDFs, but then audio and video are going to be like much more complicated, I assume. I do know we're doing some stuff with unstructured, that open source library, and hopefully the multimodal things will just be catalyzed by that collaboration, because that's an awesome library that is very powerful for multimodal document parsing. All right, Riley, I've tried to use LangChain for this, but the latency is really high. Can you speak to latency? Cool. Yeah, so I can speak to this just from personal experience, because basically the latency with Canopy itself is like near zero. The only times that I've personally seen high latency is when OpenAI is having issues, because everything under the hood relies on OpenAI right now as a default. So if OpenAI is getting bottlenecked or throttled rather by public traffic, you're kind of like at the mercy of that. And I do know that ChatGPT 3.5 Turbo as the chat engine is much faster than ChatGPT 4. And so we're kind of unfortunately just like at the mercies of the API for that. But on top of the API calls, the Canopy work under the hood should be like extremely minimal in terms of latency. Manuela, I didn't understand if Canopy chooses the best embedding model for you or uses the ADA embedding. Yes, so the latter. So the ADA embedding model is always the embedding model by default. But let's say you wanted to use a model, a Cohere model, you can change that in the configuration file. Just point it to the model name, and you can use a different model. And Cohere specifically is pretty cool because I know that ADA right now does not work with multilingual documents, but Cohere has a multilingual text embedding model. So if you have non-English documents, you can use a multilingual embedding model from Cohere, and you can use RAG with non-English use cases, which is very cool. Okay, Donald, the things that Canopy abstracts away for us, TY, TTY, TY, yes, nice, are the things that typically need to be tuned to get from POC to deploy. True. Is the intent then to use Canopy, see if it works as is, yippee, and not, or if not, and then go back and tune what needs to be tuned? Yes and no. So the intent when using the Canopy CLI is kind of what you said. So like see what works, see what doesn't work, tune things. But then once you get to like a perfect RAG configuration suite, then you can either use the Canopy server to go right into production, or you can change the Canopy server's endpoint to whatever endpoint you have in production. Like let's say you have already some app up in production, you can just put that different URL instead of localhost 8000 or whatever. It will be whatever your production endpoint is, and then you can go into production super easily. All right, Eric, how does Canopy handle sub PDF and or sub page citations? I do not know. I think so because you have to supply Canopy with the text document itself. It's a little bit up to you how you want to format that text document. So like if you just put in the text document like PDF, I guess it doesn't take PDFs now, but let's say you transform the PDF into some markdown document. You would have to, I think, to get sub or like nested information, you would have to essentially add some structure to that text document for Canopy to understand how to chunk that data such that it would reflect that semi-structured metadata. I haven't personally done this. Again, like for that part, yeah, it might take some data engineering work. I'd probably refer you to go look at Llama Index and Unstructured because they can take PDFs and text documents and kind of understand like infer structure and then output like a JSON-L file or something with that structure. So you might want to look into that for that kind of thing. Andrew, is it possible to debug the context that is sent? Yes, definitely. So if you were to use this in like contributor mode, so essentially you spin up a poetry environment, you can just use it with any IDE. I think you would have to like go into the code and put debuggers in order to see the context that's actually retrieved when you issue your query. I'm not sure if there's a CLI command right now. There might be. I know they're like releasing new things every day. I'm not sure off the top of my head. I do know one thing, that this isn't the context, which I know is the most important for the user query, but this behind here, this Pinecone, this is the index dashboard that I mentioned before. So this is my demo index. So I know it's not the context that's retrieved for a particular user query, but if you wanted to just see like the chunks that are in your index, you would use the dashboard here. So you can see like this is the chunk text that is represented by the vector, this gigantic thingy. So you can kind of see context there, or you can see the universe of possible context that is chosen at query time through the dashboard. But I'm not sure off the top of my head, whoops, if there is a CLI call right now for debugging. I'm sure there is, and I'm sure the Canopy team is screaming right now silently that I don't know this. All right, let's see. Arun, does RAG support, Canopy support multi-step orchestration, auto routing, and agentic methods. Not right now. I think it would be awesome if Canopy had some integration with something like LangChain and we can have agents. I mean, technically, if you're like an advanced developer, you could just spin up a LangChain agent that hits the Canopy API endpoint. And like you could do routing and agentic stuff that way, but natively, no, it does not have agentic methods. Although I know the team is definitely aware that that would be super cool and wants to work on that in the future. L, does Canopy help extract figures and tables in PDFs? No. So right now, as I said earlier, it only works with text files. So PDFs technically are images, even though they have text information on them. So short answer, no. Long answer, hopefully with the collaboration we're doing with things like unstructured and also internal efforts, we're going to be able to extract figures and tables from PDF files and have like semi-structured text data extracted from PDFs, which would be great. Ulrich, does Canopy support any kind of re-ranking? No, but again, so this is on the docket. This is what I meant when I said in the last slide about like evaluation. So it would be awesome to be able to see the ranking of that context that you retrieve, and then also have re-ranking. So like maybe right now, how I would use Canopy for a re-ranker would be like, all right, let's say I have like a regular Solar index that has like BM25 search results or BM25 indexed documents. I would essentially grab that, and then I would essentially pass those search results into my Pinecone database, use that as context, and use that as a re-ranker in some like downstream way. I know that's a huge headache, and the point of Canopy is to like not have things be a headache. Short answer is that it's coming. And I am definitely on board with that as well. Megan, can you speak to the benefits and differences of RAG versus the different mechanisms, OpenAI, custom GPTs? Yes. So right now, so I guess I haven't played with custom GPTs a ton, but I know that the OpenAI, what is the endpoint called? It's like the assistant or something. Basically, their RAG, I don't know what you call it, framework, like helper GPT things, are super limited by context right now. So I think they can only take, 20 pages of context into account, or like 20 pages into account when essentially like on their backend vector database to use as context during at query time. So I know that's a huge limitation right now. I know there's also not any customization you can do off the bat right now with how that context is formatted and retrieved. And so right now, essentially, Canopy is just way easier than custom GPTs. I have no doubt that OpenAI is going to make custom GPTs way more intuitive to use and easier. But right now, the main difference is just that Canopy is way easier and customizable and totally open source. So, Arif, I have a lot of unstructured data and text. What is the process of getting them into Canopy? Yes, so if you go in to the README, boop. So here, I don't know if you guys can see this text very well. Can I do this? I don't know. I'm sorry if this is too small, but essentially the README, where are we, will shows you how to structure your text file. So this is just a sample, but it would essentially be like in a columnar format with source, metadata, text, and ID. And there is a notebook that if we click this is actually from James, who is on the call now. This is just a bunch of text data, again, from those archive.org papers. And James has a script. Oh my gosh, come on, has a script here that essentially maps a bunch of unstructured data to the categories that Canopy wants, and then it'll output it to a JSON L, and then you can upload it directly into Canopy. So the README has resources for you on that end, and then something in the future that hopefully is coming very soon is that you won't have to format your text file at all. So hopefully in the future, very soon, you'll be able just to drop in a Parquet file or JSON-L file or whatever file, and have like no work whatsoever. So hopefully that will come very soon. Vanch, let's see. No, so Canopy is not configured to take advantage of GPUs yet. I would say, I'm not sure. I guess it would depend. I'm trying to think. Yeah, the short answer is no. I'm trying to think like if there's like an AnyScale embedding model that's hosted on AnyScale, if it's configured to use a hosted GPU, like through the endpoint, maybe that would be a way to use a GPU, but right now, no. And yes, you can add your own metadata fields. So you can see here, all that is here in James's notebook is a metadata dictionary. So all Canopy cares about is that you have a metadata dictionary that is under the key metadata. But then within the dictionary, you can have anything. So like James happens to have title, primary category, published and updated, but this can be literally anything. All that Canopy wants you to have is just some metadata dictionary. Or not. I mean, you don't have to have metadata, but usually people have metadata. Yes, I will share the PowerPoint after the webinar. Does Canopy support any re-ranking? We already spoke about that. Oh, and I can show you actually, if you wanted to see, do we have time for this? Yeah, I think we do. Let's see if I do round robin. So right now the ranking is a round robin sort. So if you know how that algorithm works, I'm not going to explain it because I am bad at explaining algorithms, but essentially it gets all of the query results, chooses them via the round robin heuristic, and that's how it ranks the context and figures out like what to actually give you back. Again, because this is totally open source, if you wanted not round robin, if you wanted, I don't know, something completely different, I can't think of a different algorithm right now, but you can totally just override that function. Is there any ARM architecture capability? No, not right now. All the infrastructure stuff is not configurable with Canopy. Like if you wanted to run a Pinecone index on ARM infrastructure, you can, but you would have to configure that on your own. The subpage sub-citations, I think we got that one. Does Canopy support images? No, not right now. In the future, yes. Joseph, so one cannot use a Hugging Face embedding model. No, you definitely can. You definitely can use Hugging Face embedding models. Yes, go do that. I think right now, I'm not sure if we have a integration published just yet for Hugging Face. I know we have AnyScale, Cohere, and OpenAI. You might have to do some finagling in the library itself, but essentially, out of the box, I don't think right now you can do Hugging Face, but essentially you can if you just change the code a little bit, which I know is not ideal if you're a beginner. Andrew, read about running on-prem. So this was actually a question that I got when I made a similar presentation at a conference the other week. Right now, we have no on-prem capability. Hopefully, when we publish the capability that would work with locally hosted models, that would be easily doable, obviously. Right now, though, we have no, essentially, Pinecone is HIPAA, GDPR, whatever compliant, but the actual call, so the call to OpenAI's ChatGPT would have to be through the API, not on-prem, unless you somehow have ChatGPT on-prem if you're OpenAI, I guess. So right now, the security of like that network traffic, we can't guarantee right now. But soon we will be able to do on-prem everything. Are there any plans to integrate Canopy with re-rank endpoint? Not yet, but I think re-ranking has been the most popular topic for all of these questions. So I will definitely give that back to the team and note that, yeah, endpoints, not only to do custom re-ranking, but also just to hit a re-ranker that is hosted on Cohere would be nice. Vanch, is Canopy compatible to use Lambda in production already? I don't know. James or someone else, does anybody know if we can use AWS Lambda? I want to say no, but I don't actually.
So I mean, AWS Lambda from again, I'm not an infra guy or anything, so I'm not super clear on what the exact requirements are. But from what I remember, it's not that it's kind of annoying to get it working with something that you have in a container, but possible, like a Docker container. So I think you need to modify things a little bit, but again, I'm not super sure. But you can use the Canopy core library and just kind of like write your own RAG pipeline, and then just send your code over to Lambda, as I understand. But again, take everything I just said with a grain of salt.
Yeah, and speaking of the Docker part, I do know. So right now we have a Docker file. Actually, I think is it here? Pretend I'm not showing you this, but I mean it'll be public soon. But essentially, we have a Docker file that will spin up Canopy for you, so you can change this document to your heart's content. Although I don't think the Docker image is up yet for the public, but it will be soon, and it's essentially written. So, and Ryan, plans to increase the max chunk size. No, but again, like literally all you need to do. Like we just wanted defaults that work for most everybody. So if you wanted to change the chunk size, where's the chunk size? Here we go. You would literally just be like, I don't know, 1036. And then that's boom, you change the chunk size. Cool. And the cool thing about Canopy is that if you change the chunk size to something like 1036, whereas before it was only 256, Canopy has a bunch of methods under the hood that essentially ensure that when you send your context to the LLM, all the chunks that you retrieve as context and the overhead size of the query that you're sending to the LLM itself together do not exceed the LLM's context window. So if your chunk size is too big, Canopy, like with all of the context you're sending to the LLM, it will either give you an error or it'll work, I guess. But under the hood, it'll make sure that you never get like OpenAI errors, basically for the what do you call it, context window. Chris, so I have a React-based chat bot built on Next.js. It talks directly to Canopy via API. Correct? Yes. I believe it's streaming response. Let me see. I think we can literally look. I think so. This guy, streaming chat response. I want to say by default streaming is true, but I'm not sure off the bat. Let's see, when I did stream bool is false. Yeah, okay, so the chat completion endpoint that we have in Canopy, the streaming Boolean is set to false by default, but again, all you would need to do is do true, and then you could have streaming enabled, and easy peasy. And also just if this isn't obvious, when you make a change like this, like streaming is true, all you need to do to incorporate that change is just reissue that CLI command Canopy start, and then it'll know that it'll pick up all the changes that you just put in if you're doing CLI like iteration and stuff like that. Peter, speaking of ranking, any future support for RAG Fusion? Okay, so RAG Fusion is a thing I've heard a lot about. I don't actually know what RAG Fusion is. What? James, do you know what RAG Fusion is? Sorry to pick on you a lot.
No, it's fine. I always mix up the concepts. I think it's where we are going small to big, or I could be wrong on that. It's one of the sort of RAG techniques, but as far as I know, Canopy doesn't support it. In fact, I'm relatively confident it doesn't, but I don't remember.
Yeah, I haven't heard any talk about it, so I'm assuming no, it does not support it now, but future support, why not? Also, if you like any of these ideas that you guys are all talking about, you can totally just open an issue in the Canopy GitHub repository. Even if you're not a developer, just be like, this would be cool if Canopy did this, and then either a developer from the open source community or someone from Pinecone will see that and work on it. So I encourage everybody to do that if you want features. And I know we have 5 minutes left. Jocelyn, do we have any ending remarks, or can I keep answering questions?
Hey there. No, it's great to hear all these questions. I just want to let people know that I'm collecting them. I'm a slow typist, but I am typing as fast as my fingers will let me. and recapping highlights and questions in the forum thread that I've posted in the chat. So
nice.
if you want to continue the question, bring it over, or want to continue the conversation, bring it over to the forum. And the same with feature requests. If you want to make feature requests, I put a link in there. You can make feature requests in the forum. And the great thing is that not only are those viewed by our product folks, but they're votable. So we can get insight. You can also get some insight into how much that tracks with what other folks are looking for.
Sweet, cool, thank you. All right, so we're gonna go keep answering questions for 4 more minutes. Brian, is there a way to convert an existing Pinecone index to a Canopy index? No, and this is one of the most asked about things. So right now there is not, but there will be at some point. This is something we hear about a lot. So yes, TBD, or not TBD, forthcoming. Anonymous attendee. Would love to hear more from James. You can watch his YouTube videos and connect with him on Twitter. I know he is a crowd favorite. I'm sorry, I am not him. BT Franklin, is there a supported workflow where you can add new information or documents as your knowledge base grows? Totally. I mean, so if you basically, if I were to do, I guess if I go out of here, oh, what do I want to do right now? I want to do, so like, let's say I have a new JSON-L. All you would do is Canopy upsert. And I could literally just re-index this, this thing. But basically, let's say that you have more data. All you would do is point it to that JSON file or Parquet or CSV, whatever. And this is how it looks. So basically, you just do Canopy upsert and then the path to that file. You would have a preview of how Canopy is understanding your data. It would ask you, does this data look right? You would say yes, and then this this progress bar will go. And this depends on how fast the latency here depends on how fast your local network is, because this is running locally. Mine is probably not very fast because I'm on video right now with you guys. But oh look, 40% already. All right, cool. So that is how that works. Pricing. So Diego, totally, everything is totally free with Canopy. The pricing for Pinecone, it's free up to 100,000 vectors. So as soon as you surpass that, I don't actually know the pricing off the top of my head, but it's super cheap. If you go to pinecone.io/pricing, it'll all be there. I do not know off the top of my head. I'm not a very good salesperson. I don't know. I'm sorry. Kevin, have you ever heard of a use case for Canopy RAG to conduct quality control? You used research articles. Would it be possible to prompt the engine to correctly decide which articles were authored by similarly named people? Yeah, I think so. I wonder if we could do that. I wonder if we could do that live. Let's see. Like TLDR, I don't see why not. But let's see, like if we have. All right, so I see here there's a dude named Ilya Loshkilov and a guy named Ilya Shumailov. Let's see if we do Canopy chat. Let's do Canopy chat again. No RAG. I guess right now I'm going to query using their names. So I guess like clustering on similar names. I'm not sure how we would do that off the top of my head. But if I do like, tell me about that dude and this dude versus this dude and their differing research. Cool. I guess that's what I'll say. Let's see if this actually works. Cool. So it says they're 2 different researchers. This is what their research is about. Archive, blah, 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 blah. And then ChatGPT is like, what the hell are you talking about? So I guess it works if you know the similar names beforehand. If you're talking about kind of just like general clustering, what you would have to do, I think, is essentially like have a vector that represents the similar, like the thing you, like your centroid, basically, the thing that you would want to cluster around. And then you would essentially query your Canopy index by vector, and then you can get all the vectors that are similar to that vector. And this is all really just Pinecone native querying. Right now, Canopy doesn't, I think, come out of the box with like similarity clustering, like through natural language ways, but it's super easy to do just hitting your Canopy index through the Pinecone Python client without Canopy, if you like. And it's 10:01, so I think we're going to end there. As Jocelyn said, put all your questions in the forum, because I know there was a bunch that I didn't get to answer. I just saw one. Sathis Kumar, can I use ChromaDB? Hell no, man. This is Pinecone. Get out of here. No, sir. And yeah, so let us know what you thought online, and thank you all for coming. This has been great.